All right, you guys, tonight on Collective Bodyflight Academy, we got another episode. I'm going to let my teammate Josh give the intro tonight.
Oh, well, tonight we're talking to Jack Minahan, my old buddy from back in the iFly Denver days. We flew together for maybe 2 years, didn't we, Jack?
Just about, yep.
Yeah, we worked a lot of VFS. We were starting to touch a little bit on some dynamic skills, but most of what we did was training VFS, and then you flew and competed with our other buddy John Braun in what was that,
Ooh,
2022, something like that?
Yep, 2022 in the Springs.
Excellent. Yep.
so
National
bad.
champion runner-ups, I say, not second place.
Yeah. Hey, a medal's a medal.
A medal's a medal, right there.
There it is.
I got it in
Yep.
camera view. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Something we always love to do at the beginning of every episode is just talk a little bit about what has been your most recent flight experience. So whether it was sky, tunnel, coaching, goofing off, competing, what's been your last flight?
Yeah, the timing is like super impeccable, honestly, for this. I relocated back to the north suburbs of Illinois, so I'm like right in between Skydive Chicago and Skydive Midwest. I've been jumping a lot at Midwest, and Midwest skydiving is in the springtime can be very, very dicey, much like it can be in many other places. And so a jump about 2.5 weeks ago, I want to say, super windy, just not very good conditions. It was kind of on and off for most of the day, and I came in for a really bad landing, like just totally ate it. And when I landed, I was like, oh my God, I kind of feel like I just broke my foot. And I didn't. The x-rays came back negative. It was swollen up in a ball for 2 weeks. I was in a boot. I was on crutches. I just got off crutches and out of my boot. So I'm finally kind of moving around a little bit and limping. So my most recent skydiving experience, my last jump, was not a very good one. So I'm going to be looking to bounce back here very soon and get back in the plane and try to have a little bit of a better experience.
Oh man, glad to
Sounds
hear you're all
rough.
right. It's serious if you wouldn't got an X-ray. I hate when those happen.
Dude, it was bad. My foot was like a ball. It was not good, but I'm feeling better now, which is good.
Heck yeah,
Sounds
man.
like you got lucky though. Not a
Yeah,
not a serious injury if you're up and
for
moving around
sure.
now. That's great, man.
Yeah, for sure.
And Josh, what about you, man? What's been your most recent flight?
Well, I mean, the big news for me is that I recently moved all of my coaching from iFly Denver to Colorado Springs, which I don't know if I really talked about it much on here. Um, I've been going for about a month now flying in the big tunnel, and it's really cool. I'm starting to pick up on a lot of the big tunnel techniques, a lot of things that I'm sure that you're familiar with, Mike. Some of the techniques for like slow speed, coaching slow speed skills that we kind of missed out on growing up in a 12-foot tunnel. So it's really cool talking to those guys down there and picking some other coaches' brains about how to really get the most out of having 14 feet in a round tunnel.
Wow, man. How much time have you put in, or how many days have you had leads in the big tunnel?
I've done a month there, so I think 8 days we've done league so far. So flying maybe like 20 something hours in the tunnel.
Oh man, that's fantastic. I'm really glad. What's been the biggest change being there at a privately owned franchise?
Well, the best part is that they let me do whatever I want. I had a lot of restrictions
As they
before.
should.
Yes, had a lot of restrictions before, and now, it's like if you want to spot your own students, that's fine. If you want to touch the students, that's great. Something I wasn't allowed to do, which really put a damper on coaching, especially coaching slow speed skills like slow speed in face and out face carving. I mean, those are skills you need to have hands on, and under my previous contract coaching at the Denver tunnel, I was not allowed to do that. So that's a big change. And I have noticed that, man, having this extra room and the students feeling a little bit more comfortable with the extra space, like sign-offs are coming really fast for everyone now.
You
Uh,
do oh,
yeah, I was
sorry,
gonna say,
Mikey.
what was your experience going from coaching with Josh in the Denver tunnel to a bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I tell everybody this. I mean, Josh, you too, Mikey, you guys are like the goats of indoor tunnel flying. But I mean, my experience with Josh was, I mean, I think, and you could probably explain this better, Josh, but I think my progression within that short period of time, I mean, it was just insane. And I know we really didn't get to work together at all in the Springs tunnel. I think we did like a couple of Huck Jam days, and that was about it. But you do have this style, I feel like, where you push it, but you push it in a very, controlled, safe way. And I think having that confidence for the students, just like that extra little space in the tunnel to learn layouts or just do like gnarly flips in the tunnel when you're working on transitions and BFS. I mean, that I feel like that's just gonna help your students progress in such a quicker way, which is awesome.
Yeah, it really is. It's very helpful. That extra space, people have been commenting like how much more comfortable they feel. And yeah, I do like to push people right up to their edge, but I like to keep them, like you said, in a safety zone. And that is, I mean, I'm so used to working within a 12-foot confine, and now having an extra foot on each side, it doesn't seem like much, but man, having people trying front flips or layouts, people just feel like this comfort, this like little extra bump of comfort that they didn't have before. Something that a lot of people have commented on though is about how disorienting it is and
Yeah,
how bright it is, and there's no
yeah,
visual references, which the first time I went to a 14 footer, I felt the same way. I felt so lost. And I didn't realize how dependent I was upon those visual references like flat walls in a 14 footer and the lines between the panels, like all that stuff makes a big difference when you're tracking like dynamic lines or something. So that's taking a little bit of getting used to. Um, I will say this about Jack as a student. I think that in the short amount of time that we had, we may have made more progress than just about anyone else. Um,
wow,
every once in a while, a student comes along, and from the very beginning, really after the first session, I kind of feel like, you know what, this person is going to have the opportunity to do whatever they want in skydiving. It's just about honing on a discipline. And Jack is one of those people that I felt that about. And it was, anytime that happens, I'm just like, I don't know how long I'm going to have with this person, but I want to instill as much of what I know. And so when they go off to fly with someone else or they go off to start doing records and things, they have as much of a knowledge base as I can possibly provide them. So, Jack, I'm really excited to see your videos now, some stuff since we've flown together.
yeah. And some of these we'll see. You probably one of them you've taken actually, so you'll recognize a couple of them. But I appreciate you saying that, and I think yeah. I mean, for me, I was kind of in the tunnel with you too, Josh. I was like, I didn't really ever want to consider myself to be just like a static or a dynamic flyer. I feel like I'm a student of both. I'm not any good at either one of them, but I wanted to be a really well-rounded skydiver and work the slow speed stuff, work the static things, try to fly some lines. And like, if you want to go to one instructor in the world that can teach you all those things, it's you. And I think it's really helped me kind of hone in on my skills altogether. And my advice for anybody that's listening to this is don't consider yourself to be one discipline flyer. You need to learn all these things, especially if you're a skydiver, because it's just going to help your skills in every single way.
Love it.
Thanks.
Well, as we're diving in some video today, without having to like explain what's in the video, did you have any specific like goals or objectives today out of spending some time with us tonight as we check out your flying?
No, I don't think so. I think obviously I've flown with both of you in the tunnel. I think you both know, my style and things like that, but any coaching tips from either one of you, I will gladly take.
Well, I'm stoked to check it out. Let me know if video's popping up good on your guys' end. And if I
Got it.
plug in their slowdown,
Yeah.
let me know. I know you gave us 3 tunnel clips today. I haven't seen anything but the opening thumbnail, so let's check it out and see what we got going on.
Flying
Uh,
regrets.
yeah,
Flying with
looks like
Rhett,
this
shout out
first
Rhett's.
tunnel. Just kind of watching some cruising around. What an awesome facility, man. This is so great. You get to spend your time here now, Josh.
It's
Cool.
really
Yeah.
great. Yeah. Definitely
Um,
worth the extra 30-minute drive.
who are you flying with on this?
This is Rets. Shout out to Rets.
Yeah, buddy.
Following him on a dynamic line here. This was, I think I came back. This is maybe like right after I moved or right before I moved. I can't remember. Um, but yeah, I mean, Rets needs no introduction. He's obviously a legend in the sport, but just working some basic dynamic lines here. I think this is obviously you can see me following him around. One thing with me was like, and I think Josh, you probably remember this too. When you're learning dynamic, I feel like I was so small with everything, and just using the entire tunnel is something you need to start getting much more confident with. And like throughout this session, you can see there's times when on certain moves, I'm like, okay, I'm getting a little sketched out here. I'm going to keep it close to the center line. And then there's others where I'm a little bit more confident. There's my awful attempt at outface right there. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
this was an awesome session.
It looks like snake layout, head up shuffler.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, something that Mike and I found, we had competed one year on a four-way dynamic team, and we trained in Denver, and then we went and we competed, I think at Seattle or somewhere. And one thing that we found, I kind of am seeing it here, is that we really had to force ourselves to open everything up because we were used to flying in that 12-foot space. And so when we had access to 14 feet during training, we had trouble with busting the sidelines and not going far enough because we were so used to compressing everything into the 12-foot space. And that's something that I'm telling people now is I found two things. People either get crammed up against the wall, or people are all the way across the center line and they're up against where I am.
Yeah.
And I found that a lot of people have had trouble orienting to the center of the tunnel or orienting to that space. And I would say the biggest thing that I really see going on here, like right there where
Yeah.
you were flying that snake and it looked like you may have just barely crossed the center line.
Yeah.
It's just being confident opening it up and, being 8 inches off the wall as you're flying your snakes and as you're doing your layouts, crossing the entire tunnel. Um, Another thing that I'm seeing too, there are a few of these flip downs where you're coming out of the layout and going into the shuffler. It looks like I saw a couple where you may have over rotated as you flip from your head to your feet.
Yeah.
And something that I would always tell people on that maneuver is so you can see that you're flipping down and you're going into a stag. When it comes up again, we'll get a good eyeball of it. But if you are flipping down off your head with the back flipping going into a stag, I always found right here, so you see how you kind of fell to your
Yeah.
back right there? What
Yeah.
I've always found that helps fix that problem is instead of going to stag right away, is going to a neutral sit first. And then once you orient your body vertical, then punching out the stag leg. Because if you flip down to a stag and you under rotate it, so if you are still on your belly a little bit when you get your stag leg out, now the stag leg generates a bunch of backslide and it's really easy to over rotate you to your back. So
Right.
if you break that up in just like two sections, flip down to regular sit, and then once you get to your feet, punch the leg out, I found that helps fix that particular problem.
Yeah. When I get too eager on that punch out, it's like you were saying, I feel like my orientation is already, I'm almost in a back fly position and I'm just trying to force it, and just taking the time to get oriented is super important.
Yeah, and it's super tempting to flip it down directly into stag, especially when you're flying dynamic, because like one of the tenets of dynamic is you want to keep your body as straight as possible and actually change
Yeah.
your body position as little as possible. But that like that advice and that idea, that is when someone is like 100% dialed on every single maneuver.
Right.
And if you're still learning these maneuvers, I found that it is really helpful to break things down into sections. So break it down into a backflip to your feet, and then second step would be punch out the stag. And then as you get
Love
better
it.
and better and better, you do it 1,000 times, then you're like, okay, let me try to blend these two things together.
Yeah.
I use that blending technique for almost everything. Break it up into a few bite-sized chunks, and then as you get better, blend it together.
Yeah. Mikey, I don't know if you remember this, but when it was a Huck Jam a couple years ago, and you and I got in the tunnel, we were just flying like head down carving basically, and then we'd switch to just head up carving, just really simple stuff. And I feel like even when I was watching those videos, like I do this with my arms
Yep.
here, where I feel like I'm just trying to stabilize and catch as much wind as I can. And throughout that entire rotation, you were just telling me to drop my arms, relax, trust the wind a little bit. And that's something I really gotta watch, I think, when I'm flying these lines, is I just get a little bit too stiff and I'm not really trusting myself enough.
I think like one thing I love to do, I'll share two thoughts. One thing I love to do is give people drills to let you kind of teach yourself and feel it out a bit. And when I'm watching a lot of the flying head down, I see like your roots of static flying in a
Yeah,
12-foot tunnel here.
yeah,
And in being someone who has worked into coaching in bigger tunnels a lot more, both from a trainer perspective and a coaching perspective, I think one thing that's really helpful, a drill, is to try and like bring your hands into funny positions while you're carving. Mostly, well, a good starting one is to put your hand on your hip and just try to
mm,
take it out of the equation to force your torso and legs to compensate for that change. And what you're going to feel happen is when your hand comes out of the equation, you're going to start to sink. And to compensate for that loss of surface area, you lean with your back or your legs. And so
yeah,
it's a very slow, funky process. It's going to be different, mostly because you're going to feel that you're giving up stability and control for just angular drive. And you just have to figure out what to do with it, and figuring out a staging or a progression for that um, will help you do this. And I would say just getting it in carving at this speed and try and take a hand and put it on your hip so you're 50% compensating for it, and then try to take your other hand out and put it on your hip where you're just carving with your hands down by your side, and then eventually let them go. And you're going
yeah,
to feel this trade-off in control and surface area from a static vertical torso and like hanging off your legs and shelf to more of a permanently angled dynamic position, which will be a new feeling, you know. In static, you gain control by staying static and holding position and hovering essentially. But when you truly commit to dynamic flying, there is no stability in holding still. You get more
right.
control by moving forwards more. So it's just I think it's a change in mindset from thinking about, you know, fighting for position to having your brain be, you know, a quarter of a tunnel carve ahead of where you're actually at. So you're
Yeah,
constantly planning for what's going forwards. So
yeah,
a funny drill is just try to fly when you're head down carving with a hand on the hip, and then try to bring the other hand in and just force yourself to become comfortable with like your torso sinking back and let it go faster.
yeah,
So that's a drill I'd love to share. And it'd be a thing where you're at this funny place in your progression where it's like we have to give you ideas and drills to get you to teach yourself. You're beyond spotting at this point for
right.
everything. So it's what can we show you or share with you, a thought or a drill? This is one I'd love to see you play with. Fly without your arms. And
Yeah,
it will work head up as well. But start head down, that'll be a little easier, and then come break that into head up. And then the second thought I wanted to share
Wait,
isn't
hold on. Before you go to the next one, you talking about the hand on the hip brought something up that nothing makes me prouder in a flyer than watching them fix their zipper while they're flying. So it's a really good it's a another good place to put your hand is up here. You know, like
yep, yeah.
unclip or
Oh,
unclasp and close it again while you're flying. It gives you like something to mess around with your hand instead of just placing it somewhere, but just like unsnap or unvelcro it and then try to put it back while you're carving circles. Because then when that happens, I mean, there's nothing worse than having to stop flying and stand up on the net and
right.
fix your zipper. You know,
Yeah.
it looks so much more badass to just fix it while you're flying. Because that's
Yeah,
like when you see that, you're like, there's pro flyer right there.
right. That, but like the idea of carving on your head at, 95 and you're like in the middle of a line and doing that, that's scary too, for sure. but
you'll find it's probably not as hard as your brain is telling you that it is.
right.
Like if you just start
Yeah.
moving one hand around, you'll realize how quickly the rest of your body will start to compensate. It's like
Yeah.
it will be totally on autopilot. And that's what you really want. Like to be good at flying, there's two things. You got to be a good vehicle, which is the shape that you're flying, and then you have to be a good pilot. And without the shape working, you're not going to be able to pilot it. But you will be surprised. There are these four shapes that, belly, back, head up, and head down. But within each one of those, there are thousands of variations. You can fly with one arm in, you can fly with both arms in, you can fly with your legs crossed. Like all of these shapes will work. And most of them are really just very slight changes in the piloting that's required. Like if you just make one little change, your body will almost compensate for itself.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a confidence thing too. Like just you were kind of saying that too, Mikey. It's like, yeah, I don't need a spotter really for anything, but it's like, can I just get out there and do what the coaches are telling me to do? And that's easier said than done, obviously. But
I think the
be a little
place,
teapot and fix that
yeah,
zipper.
I think the place for a coach in your world now, like a Retz or a Josh or myself, is just to share patterns of movement with you
Yeah.
or like a sequence of progressions. But
Or discipline.
yeah,
Yeah.
Creating a discipline.
Yeah.
and you'll figure it out. But that's what I mean. Like it's still great for like without just being able to burn tunnel time for free.
Yeah.
If you're spending money on it, then a coach is worth your dollars to guide you through the path faster than we learned by
Yeah.
just flying into the wall or making mistakes.
For sure.
Speaking about the four body positions, having like, the core pieces and then having all the different tweaks. I wanted to share my second piece of coaching. And it's less of a drill, it's more of a technique for watching video. So I don't know if Josh has ever said it to you in this way, but I love and I'm a huge proponent of people watching video. As someone that's like a freestyle flyer, a trick flyer, a diver, like somebody that likes gymnastics, I wanted to have my flying look a certain way and have style to it. And so I watched video a lot, but it took time to get good at that. And I don't know if I was ever taught to do that. So what I think about with video is pick a fly, and this is wonderful video with Rhett. So Rhett's amazing, like
Let me roll while you're talking.
body pilot. So what I'd love to do is just say, hey, watch this video or any video you have in the future to kind of be self-taught and pick things apart better. And I would just pick a sequence of movement here. So I picked the classic with Rhett's because there's a lot of good coaching points. And you want to watch the video a bunch of times to pick apart different things, okay? One, it's something you can manage and do right now. Like it's not outside of your skill set to safely pick this move apart. You're already flying it. We just want to make it bigger, faster, cooler,
Yeah.
less effort on you. And so you have an example with Rets, or if it's something that's not in the session you're on, like go watch a YouTube video of the person you want to fly, like Sydney or Leo Volkov or some other ripper, Schwager, whatever it is. And then just like watch a small sequence of movements and look at their arms, legs, and torso. So I would watch a video 3 times and pick apart the parts of the body, arms, legs, and torso to know what they're doing with that. So as I watch this little segment with Retz doing the layout, I'm first watching him, and Retz is closer to us from this camera view. I watch how he goes through the bottom of the layout, position of arms, legs, and torso, how he performs the classic, goes through his feet, and then finishes in that head up portion. And then what you want to do is look at your body and try to see if you can't mix that in or notice where a slight difference could be made to change the shape of your body to look like someone who you want to emulate or who you'd view as a mentor, someone that's, a tweak above you, one step above you. And so an interesting piece I would share is in the feet first portion of the classic, look at how Dave has both legs extended to create
and then like a stag
surface area, so he drops faster. And as a style point, look at how they're just like lightly crossed. It can
Heel
help.
to toe.
Yeah, man, it's awesome looking. His body's
Watch
up.
his legs here too. This is his cool style.
Yeah, and Dave's a tall guy like you.
Yeah,
So
right.
it would probably be beneficial for you to watch a tall person like you who's really good, because they're going to move in a similar way to how you'll fly.
Yeah.
Look at how extended he is as he pushes through the bottom. How much power is that going to create at 92% if you go
Yeah.
flat? What's going to
Yeah.
happen? And so just notice that position as he comes up to head down. Remember, we were talking about arms on the zipper or arms at your hip. He's coaching you. He doesn't need his arms to do
Yeah, it's like
any of
point
it.
around.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's just like a little piece with the bottom portion. And then what I love here is he finishes. Sometimes he finishes in his knees or sometimes in a stand. You could even look at that and like isolate that movement. And when you're warming up in round one of a flight or you're going to goof off and blow off some steam at a session in the future, you could just try knee flying like top
Yeah.
down. And it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be at the bottom of a cradle or a layout. It could just be like, oh, in my dynamic video with Rets, I saw him hold a knee fly at 90. Why don't I try that?
Yeah.
Best case scenario, you cork to your back and then fix it and then get out and try it again. So I think watching video is an incredibly important tool you can have at this level of skill to go. There is a perfect example of him finishing the layout. Like, see how he's holding that shape with the legs? Have you ever tried?
Yeah. No.
Go try it your next flight.
Yeah.
Just go from a
Yeah.
sit and play with this movement. And it's letting him create a little more space. It's just like a unique feel. And I would say start playing with a little bit of within your core body positions, belly back, sit, and head down, playing with different shapes, hands on the hip, a little more knee fly,
Yeah.
cross-legged stag to descend, just to start to feel what it's like to take your range of motion and your skill set from here to something bigger. Expand your pattern of movement through video. So I love it. I
Yeah.
think
Great
watching video
advice.
is super important when you have someone who you're in the range of throwing those sequences, but you're not quite looking the same yet. So pick it apart and just pick one simple movement like a part of a layout or a snake and watch the person you want to look like a bunch of times for arms, legs, and torso. Then watch yourself a bunch of times for arms, legs, and torso and say, next time I go fly, I'm going to make a small difference in one of those parts of the body.
Yeah. It's such a good call out. I think the timing of this was interesting too, because this was right after training for nationals for static, where like Josh and I and John Braun, shout out to John, were flying like twice a week for a
GB.
couple of months and doing only static stuff. And I remember getting in the tunnel with Rets just to mess around. And I had done his dynamic night a couple times. And me watching this video, the only thing that was going through my head was I was so stoked at everything that I was doing because it was so different from what I was training. And I think what I failed to recognize is that I actually need to like dissect it a little bit rather than just being so pumped that I was even keeping this line going with Dave Retzlaff in the tunnel. I'm like, okay, this is pretty insane. But yeah, you're so right. And there's like little nuanced things here when you pause it too. I'm like, oh my God, my body position, I look like all crinkled up and he's just buttery smooth. So it's definitely an awesome call out.
Yeah. I love it. I think those are great things to think about. Josh, you notice anything else with this vid you want to share?
No, I think that's good on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really good
Awesome.
advice. Every time I talk to you, Mike, find something I'm going to steal.
Perfect.
Stealing that whole diatribe you just gave.
I love my diatribes. Who thought I love talking about something I really care about?
That's the best.
All right.
Oh, here
Okay,
we go.
wait,
Here's some Nationals footy.
Yeah, this is, I think this might be my favorite tunnel video I've ever been in before. This is
That's John Braun?
underratedly, what?
That's you and John Braun? That's your
Yeah,
team?
it's me and John. This is second or third round of nationals in 2022. This is an underratedly tough draw here, and I think we like demolish everybody else in this round. And back
Yeah.
in belly flying is just so hard in the tunnel, especially in 2A VFS. And I was so stoked after this one.
Yeah.
Especially in that tunnel, the way it was tuned
Yeah.
that year, super mushy at the bottom. Yeah, this is a hard draw. It's got all the blocks from belly back, and you have to both go flat to your belly in the middle. I mean, looks like you are very well trained.
Yeah.
I don't know. For the people that are gonna listen to this, Josh and John and I spent, I think we trained for a solid 4 months. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Leading up to nationals. And like when John and I started, we couldn't keep our levels together. We like didn't really know who was the back or who was the belly flyer. We didn't know who was going to fly head up, who was going to fly head down. And this being the finished product from where we started is pretty sick.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
we used to we would fly in the afternoons, and you would usually be, I think, my first flight when I would show up, and so, or something about our schedule, we didn't have time to brief, so we would always do video briefs. And I
Yeah.
remember a few times being up on my roof installing Christmas lights when you called, and then FaceTiming you from up on the roof to brief
Yeah.
you on the night's jumps. Uh, Actually, that's like a core memory in my mind. It was
Yeah.
briefing you while standing up 40 feet up on top of the roof.
Yeah.
But something that really jumps out that's really good about this for anyone that's training 2A MFS or 2A VFS in the tunnel is the way that you guys are doing your grip 360 grips. The level change, yep, the offset.
Yeah.
So if you're not offsetting your 360s like this, you
Right
should
here.
start now because it allows you basically to cog the maneuver. Instead of waiting for one person to spin, you can both spin at the same time. And I do think that with a lot of engineering, the vertical element is often overlooked. So this is like a really good example of how you can use levels to your advantage, especially when it seems like everything in the draw is going to be on the same level. Just use a little bit of offset to get that I guess to save a little bit of time.
Yeah. Yeah. That transition is just, I think it's that this was the most humbling thing I think to learn was that back to belly transition, staying on level with a partner, doing grips, grip 360 grip. I mean, it's not easy in the tunnel, especially on your back. And I feel like it's something that goes unnoticed for a lot of people. If they say they want to start doing MFS or 2A VFS, like you gotta be a good back and belly flyer. That's what separates you from everyone else.
Correct. Oh, speaking of correction, it's not all the blocks. Sorry, it's only one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much level change in there. I was like, oh yeah, there's an over under as well, but
Yeah.
nope, that's
Yeah.
just you guys spinning the 360.
Yeah.
Yes, you can really set yourself up to win the competition in the first 2 rounds. If you come out swinging in the belly back rounds, you can have 10-point lead before the vertical rounds even start.
Yeah. I think it's always great as people are watching this, if they haven't seen our other VFS coaching or video reviews, they're oriented head to feet so that the only transition you really do is a barrel roll. That's going to be faster than an over the feet transition because it takes less time and there's less fall rate change or vertical change. On the barrel roll to belly, the belly close, that's the longest random, I think the most difficult random in the belly back VFS tunnel dive pool. We see that knife edge you were talking about, where the knees that are closer to each other and the elbow are digging in more as they roll to their belly to drive at each other and create less distance. This
And it
is
helps stop the rotation without wobbles.
This is just a hardcore round of a lot of turns on your back, barrel rolls, belly to back, good docking on your belly. And I would imagine because, and this is, in my opinion, most 14-foot tunnels are squishy at the bottom, but especially as they're dialing into wind profile, you are probably flying at a faster speed to stay off the net on your back, resulting in a belly fly speed that was really fast, making it a necessity to do that knee dig or the knife edge. And you were like fighting floating up the whole time, and you guys dealt with it really well. You have to have in VFS really the ability to fly and dock fast on your belly, and then, or it feels like it's going to be really fast on your belly, and you're going to have to fly in your back slower. And the stronger those two things become, the more you'll find that happy middle speed where you can do both really well. But I can see and kind of notice that here. That it looks clean.
Yeah.
I've got a question. Did you guys decide to not launch with the first grip for a reason?
It's a really good question. I can't remember. I can't remember why we didn't do that. I feel like that's actually somewhat of, because we both go right to our back. Maybe that was the coach's fault for not telling us to do that.
Good one.
He's too busy hanging up Christmas lights.
You had me stumped. I'm thinking, shouldn't I ask my coach this? Josh, you're up.
Yeah, you're probably right. Well, hey,
I don't, it's a good question. I don't know.
never too late for some advice. You should always, you should always think about launching, using the first point as a cheater grip to get to point number 2. So in this case, using the entrance grip, which in the, on this particular launch, it would be super simple. You just line up facing opposite directions, pick up a hand grip in the middle, ready, set, go. You jump in and you use that entrance grip to pull you into the tunnel. And then as soon as you see that John is flying, you drop the grip and go immediately into the 360.
Yeah.
So if you have two randoms that butt up against each other, at the beginning, like let's say it's like a side body and a belly compressed, you could launch the side body and use that as the cheater grip to keep you close enough to drop as soon as you're in the wind and roll to your belly. So it's a way to, it's like a mentality that you can take to give yourself like a gimme right off the bat. Always try to launch the first point if it's possible, and then use that first point launch as a cheater grip to get to point number 2.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good call out.
I probably should have told you that 2 years ago.
Yeah, you probably should have. That was why we were runner-ups. That's why we didn't actually win it.
Yeah, did you guys lose by 1 point?
Yeah, right. We did. It was like 1 or 2. It was really close.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh well.
I actually think it was. I think it was
board.
1 or 2. I'm gonna have to ask John. It was brutally close. But yeah. The only other thing that I just noticed when I was watching this was my legs are just flying all over the place. I forgot what you would always tell me, Josh. It was scorpion legs. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, scorpion.
Yeah. And I remember watching videos of you two competing with this, and it's like watching your legs, like I'm like, they're not, it's totally still. Every time you would do a transition like that. But yeah, that's very difficult.
I feel like this reminds me of a saying I have called like matching intensities. And there's just something with the footwork and awareness and control on belly back and VFS where your intensity is here and it only needs to be here. And
Yeah.
it's like this matching intensity is like fine tuning a guitar or an instrument where like to get it just right, take some experience and practice to only use as much muscle and aggression as is needed to get the move done. But in the beginning or while you're new to the sport or figuring this out, which could take years of flying, your muscle and intensity, your effort's going to be higher than you need to get the barrel roll done. You only need as much kick or hip throw as you need to get to your belly. And once you start doing it right, it's clean and fast and it's not a lot. A drill would be, and I think I talked about this last time, so it's funny that it's coming up a lot. Try to hold your suit where the zipper is or hold your helmet and do barrel rolls without your arms so that you spend a lot more time thinking through what your legs feel like to get control, not in a competition setting. And then as you drill that muscle memory enough, you can bring it to your competition setting and maintain that same level of awareness and control. It's not necessarily aggression or muscle, it's just control and awareness.
Yeah, for sure.
I call it surgically applied minimal effort. Like when you are really good at flying, that's basically like your mantra. Surgically applied minimal effort, which is why it's really hard to look at somebody that's really good and figure out how to fly because it looks like they're not doing anything. They might be moving their hand like this much, and the rest of it is just their body is shaped in this position that gives them all the drive and turn they need. And then the piloting comes down to the smallest little movement they can possibly make. So when you're being trained, you can't really expect to go straight to that point. But
Right.
as you get better and better and more efficient, you'll find that you're using less effort and like, oh, I'm getting way less tired when I fly. It's because, oh, you weren't doing as much. You were letting the body position pilot itself for 90%. And then you were just, adding some muscle input for the last 10%. It's kind of the same idea of like that efficiency that grows out over time. It's the same idea of like why you put like a beginner head down flyer in a baggy suit, because they are not efficient at flying yet. They need, they want the suit to do as much of the work for them. But as they get better and they become more efficient and their body position gets cleaner, it takes less effort for them to lift themselves up. So that frees up some of their bandwidth that they can apply towards the actual piloting portion of it. And that efficiency, like that's just like a microcosm glimpse into the overall idea of what you should be shooting for when you fly. The more you fly, the easier it should become, the less effort and the less physical energy you should feel like you're putting into it. And then when you watch yourself, you should start to see less and less inputs over time as your flying becomes just hyper efficient, surgically applied minimal effort.
I love that very complicated phrase to explain a very simple and needed concept. It's good.
Why is the word abbreviate so long?
Let's check out number 3, shall we? Another comp round, it looks like.
Yeah, another comp round. This is head up and head down round.
Let's see what I forgot to tell you this time.
Yeah. Yeah, the level changes here are just tough to watch, Josh.
Mm.
This is really, really hard. And in this, I will say I don't want to make excuses or I don't want to blame my coach, but going
But
from
you're going to.
Yeah, but going from
That won't stop you.
Yeah, that won't stop me, but it was just a disclaimer. Going from Denver, training in Denver for as long as we did, John and I getting maybe 2 rounds or 2 tunnel sessions in the Springs like 2 days before for the first time. It was really tough for us to figure out the speed, and you can see on my transitions, I'm just popping up or I'm getting too low. And shout out to John, he's obviously very talented head up flyer, and being as low as he was to the net for a couple of minutes throughout, or for a couple of seconds throughout this round, he was really standing up pretty tall and keeping it together. But yeah, just really tough with the level changes on this draw.
Well, a really weird eccentricity of this tunnel. It's really the only tunnel I've flown that does this specific thing. It's super mushy. At this time, it was mushy like all the way down to like shoulder level. And then once you get above shoulder level, it just gets faster and faster and faster the higher you get. And coming from Denver, it's the exact opposite. Denver's power band is basically from 6 inches above the net to the top of the glass. And so anywhere within there, you have perfect clean wind column. And then above that, it slows down. So if you were to pop up like that on a front flip and your feet were to get above the glass in Denver, you would immediately kind of lose lift and start sinking down. But here you can see, like, as you're doing flips, Mike, you should talk more to this. You're the flip master. But as you're doing your head-to-head front flips, you can see that your knees are a little wide. And as you come around like the belly portion of that flip, you start to pop up right there.
Yeah.
Pops you up. You have to just be really cognizant of those types of things in a tunnel like this, which is why some flight time ahead of time is great. But if you're doing if the only time you get in the tunnel before you fly is the speed check, get in, get your speeds dialed in, and then maybe do a little bit of level change at the end to see if if you have time. The last 10 seconds, try popping up and doing a flip, 10 feet up, and do a flip at like 6 feet, something like that, just to test what the power band is like in the tunnel. The something that I really like about this video though is, Jack, your use of transitions right there, your transition and you level change. So as you go from your feet to your head, you're sinking out, which is a really vital, it's a vital skill for doing VFS, the ability to sink down or float up during a transition intentionally, because you can use that as a way to shortcut a lot of the, what's I consider to be the longest movement in vertical flying, which is a level change. So if you can do that while you're going from your feet to your back, you can sink down or you can float up as you're transitioning to your feet, you can get a little bit ahead of everything when it comes to levels.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like when you do like four-way in the tunnel too, that's super, super important when you're just trying to stay on level with everybody and you're working through a draw. But yeah, that's that in this tunnel that felt a lot smoother to me going from, my feet to my head right there. But the other way around, when you're flipping around, I was just popping up like crazy.
How would you fix those front flips, Mike? Head-to-head front
I
flips.
think practicing some drills where you're intentionally doing the head-to-head flip and rising, and also trying to do a head-to-head flip and descend by really taking your arms and legs and making them tighter and have less surface area. So I'll see if I can catch a flip or two. As we see that, you want to think about your elbows being bent and bringing your arms in closer to your body to reduce surface area. And you could also have your knees, calves, thighs, and ankles try to touch, or to the best of your ability, whatever you're
Yeah.
able to do. And that little bit of reduction in surface area will keep you lower and allow you to open up quite a bit easier on the front flip. So just a bit of a surface area reduction is what you want to do in this VFS round to stay on level better and to not push as far away. I also think your timing, you're kind of dialing in, and it sounds like you didn't have much warm up here, right? So that's pretty normal when you go to competitions or like any
Yeah.
skydive. It's like you're usually not that warmed up
Yeah.
with the
Right.
breaks or living in the Midwest.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I see the head-to-head front flip, you don't want to open up until your legs are past vertical.
That's
And
it right there.
so it's going to feel weird and you're going to feel late and you're going to
Yeah.
feel like you're giving up surface area, which you are, but you want to wait until your legs go past vertical in the ball to open up and catch yourself. And if anything, it's going to push you back towards your teammate to reduce the space and time it takes to close the grip. And what we're going to see is you're opening up early. You're about 45 degrees off or so. Where you're
Yeah.
opening up
Backslide
early.
and pop, and then you catch behind. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a very specific sequence that happens.
Yeah. So right here, so we're already kind of opening up here. And then right there, that opening is at a 45 with the torso. So you're creating all those things Josh just discussed, and
Yeah.
Backslide, pop.
it creates the backslide, the pop. And so another drill I love that I think is very weird is yeah, I'll just say this would work for you, and there are ways to mod it to make it easier. Put your head on the net, flying at this speed, and then do a head-to-head front flip and touch your head to the net as quickly as you can, as safely as you can.
Oh
And
yeah.
see how much did you float up or have an ascent due to your body or surface area. And the goal for me is I want to like feel my helmet scrape across the net as I'm tucking into my
Yeah.
front flip. And then I feel it scrape back onto the net as I finish because I
Yeah.
didn't go up at all.
The
That would
instructors
feel
will
like
love you if you go do that.
exactly. So
Yeah. Broken necks are just waiting to happen with
yeah,
that one.
what you could do
But
is
Mikey
have
said
your
I don't need a spotter, so I can do whatever I want.
yeah. What you could do though that might make it nicer on your helmet is you could have John or Josh or myself or Rhett just go hold their hand like a mind
Yeah.
warp, and you just kind of put your head in the hand and then do the same thing there. Obviously, there's some burble and some more give in the teammate's hand position, but the
Right.
idea is you're training yourself to stay low and to have a control and an awareness of that, even at a faster speed. You can, and there's trade-offs with this. We're trying to have surface area management. You can stay lower if you get better at getting your elbows in and bent and having your knees and ankles and thighs touch in the flip, or you can open up later, or you can do a mix of both. Either way, that's going to help you stay lower and closer and tighter. And so you kind of have the freedom to choose what's best for you. A weird example of this is like I'll change and play with the altitude of my flips, based on if I'm flying with, I fly and train a lot of kids. So I'm doing a lot of flying
Yeah.
at lower speeds with people. So I will intentionally open up my elbows, arms, and knees, and I will intentionally open up on my belly early because I need the lift to float up. I'm
Yeah.
flying with and
Yeah.
training all these kids all the time, all these people lighter and smaller than me. And so you can have drills to control your flips, just like you control sit up and down. You get bigger to go up, you get smaller to go down. You can do that with a flip, but it's going to take practice and be odd. But the benefit of it is when you have rounds like this, you can control it. And I know at this point, um, like Josh can fly any speed and he can descend, drop, be perfectly in spot in space. And even as a lighter flyer than me, he's always catering to my need for faster wind for static head down. But he's at a point now using these techniques that balling up tight cannonball flip control just allows you in a VFS trot to like score 28 points, 30 points on a grip flip
Yeah.
round
Yeah.
and you dominate. But just some interesting pieces there.
That's a scary flip to learn too, because it's like,
Jesus, yeah.
you feel like you feel like you're sending it all the way. And to your point, even when you were describing that, I was like, wait, I'm gonna literally track into the wall if I do that. But you obviously you're gonna be taking it at a speed where you're gonna have some opportunity to recover if you do overcompensate. You just flip right to your back, and when you feel safe in the tunnel, there's ways for you to bail out. But yeah, you do feel like you kind of got to send it. You feel like you got to kind of get it all the way over, and then sometimes when that happens, you just overshoot it.
You
And
can never train flips too much. Like it
Oh
seems like
yeah,
they are a small portion of the dive pool. There's 2 blocks that have flips in them, and in the VFS dive pool, and then there's some eagles and things. But really, there's a
right.
sit to sit front flip and a mixed front flip, and that seems like such a small portion of the dive pool. But so many times, including this year at nationals, the competition comes down to which team can flip better. The
Yeah,
last
that
round
was
at
this year, huh?
nationals, at least in the advanced category, which I know because I was there coaching Quentin and Sean, their competition came down specifically to which team could flip better. And Sean and Quentin had drilled so many flips, and a few of the other teams were not as fast, not as dialed in, and it completely shook up the entire podium.
yeah,
So getting your flips looking like there's an axle running through your hip and you're just spinning around that center point, you're not going up or down, you're not driving. That is so crucial. And then as your team starts to develop, if you find that, like, you know what, we've drilled this 1,000 times and I'm still floating. Okay, well, as the competition gets closer, you need to start thinking about putting a band-aid on your flips then. If you know one person tends to float or tends to drive, then what you should be doing is you should be having that person initialize the flips. So sorry, let me correct that. Have that person go second. Have the other person, the stronger flyer, initialize the flips, and then have the person that's driving go second. So the person that is stronger, they finish first, and they're eyeballing the flyer that tends to float, and they can be chasing them and be ready to grab them as they finish the rotation. So a way that I would say to utilize this would be, and you guys are kind of doing this already, but looking at what I'm seeing in this draw, is you have JB initialize the flip. When you see his back, that's when you start your flip.
yeah,
He should finish about a half a rotation ahead of you. And if he knows that you tend to backslide and float, then as he finishes, he should be leaning back, getting big, and floating up and going to get you. So as soon as you finish, he can close regardless of where you are in the tunnel.
Um,
JB had some pretty clean front flips here too.
Oh yeah, he's
His
rock
looked
solid.
yeah, his looked really strong. He was keeping on level, and then yeah, I was having to compensate obviously.
That
um,
timing trick was something we learned doing MFS. I don't think that Mike and I ever utilized that skill in the tunnel of cogging the timing of the flips. But in the sky, any little bit of level change or separation is like takes 10 seconds to get back together. So that
Right.
was something that Rusty and I started doing. And then I just adapted that and I teach everyone in the tunnel now. I think that one of the really important things that came out of doing MFS for me was the concept of band-aids. Before, I would just think, okay, we have to just master this technique and it has to be perfect. But in the sky, when you have limited jumps, limited altitude to work with, eventually you have to prioritize, like, what are we willing to master and what do we want to just figure out a way around? And so we came up with the idea of band-aids. Band-aids are basically like, it's a technique you can slap on top of another technique that's not perfect as a way to speed it up. And this is a perfect example of a band-aid.
Yeah.
Cogging the timing on your flips to compensate for one person floating or driving.
I love it. I'm going to steal that from you. That's a good one. Entering the point. So it looks like
Must
it
have
was,
forgot to tell him.
yep. It looks like hand to
Yeah.
foot was the entrance. And it could have been like if you were in advanced or whatever, it didn't start until the first point was made.
Yeah.
But
I know what it was. Actually, I know exactly what it was.
I
We had
would-
been training to launch from the net. And then at this competition, they told everyone they had to launch from the
Oh
net.
my God, you're
That's
right.
what it was.
You're right. You're right. So again, poor coaching, preparing us incorrectly
Exactly.
for.
But
this
what I
your
did
first-
tell
You're
you
so
guys
right
was,
though.
don't
Would you-
try something in competition that you haven't trained. And we hadn't trained those entrances. That's exactly
Yeah.
why. You
Right.
you guys just free launched everything and then built from there.
You're so right. Yeah.
And
Well-
you know, you can't always control what's going to happen at a competition. I remember one time we went, I don't know where it was, but Josh and I went to compete in open and they had printed out an ISS, or what was becoming the International Skydiving draw that's we see on the Axis website, and like the old Skyventure New Hampshire draw. And they handed out 2 different dive pools for the open draw. And when we got in the tunnel, Josh and I got one that was different than everyone else's. And they asked us to change our draw as we were in the tunnel geared up with plugs in so that
Oh
everyone
my
else
God.
wouldn't have to get out and stop the flow of the competition. Do you remember this, Josh?
Oh yeah. I think that was oh man, I think that was in one of the Chicago tunnels.
So we just like looked at each other and we like, they're like showing us the draw through the glass and we're like, all right. And so they're like doing rounds in front of us. We walk in
Yeah.
the tunnel and we're like, you good? And I'm like, yeah, man. And then we
Did you
changed
guys
the
just-
thing.
You guys frantically walked it, or did you just go and wing it?
No, we just walked it in the antechamber.
And we had
Yeah.
2 minutes. It was fine.
Nice. Yeah, that's all you two need. You two, they should just give you two to make the competition more even. They should just give you two the draws 2 minutes before you go in.
You know what? I feel like the way that I train teams now, they could do that. I feel like at this
Yeah.
point, you guys might have been
We
able
were
to do that.
dialed. We were so
And
dialed.
Sean
Yeah.
and Quentin, like when you guys were training, I would have you guys fly 6 rounds in one night. And, that's
Yeah.
like in a 15-minute session. So if you can do that, if you can engineer them all and then fly one and have it just disappear from your mind and go to the next one, then you're really training yourself to be able to engineer on the fly, which is really important. Like you never know what's going to happen at a competition.
Yeah. Or Josh, we'd fly like the like early afternoon first block, and then we'd fly league. And so we'd do different rotations every single time. And John and I in between in the antechamber, we'd walk it once and then we'd go in and be able to fly it. So yeah, no, we were super dialed in leading up to this competition.
I think you guys could have probably done that if that scenario had been handed to you.
For sure. Yeah. So testament to your good coaching, Josh.
Finally, one good
And
thing
on a
I did.
win.
Yeah.
Well, man, I think between the tunnel videos we saw today, there's a lot of awesome stuff for, viewers and people to learn from when they're thinking about how to train for VFS or what that looks like. I personally would love to see some sky footage and
Yes.
just like get
Yeah.
some feedback there. And it really could be anything, but based on how awesome it's been for Josh to work with you in the tunnel, it's time to just keep progressing and pushing towards new things. I guess big thoughts from tonight, I think, is just some ideas of how to progress on your own. Watching video, I think, would be the biggest thing I'd want you to walk away with, so that
Yeah.
you can improve on your own, whether you have us there or not. Josh, did you have anything that was like important, or one or two or three, like the top hitters out of
I think
tonight?
the best takeaway from tonight was what you told him about watching video, uh, watching people that you want to emulate, watch their arms, legs, and torso, and each time you fly, trying to incorporate, one of those things. Something I saw that I really liked that Dave was doing as he was flipping down out of his into his shuffler was getting his arms back like this. So he wasn't just doing cool stuff with his legs and going, either into uh a tight knee, toed heel stag or wide leg stance or knee fly. Like he's doing all these cool things with his legs, but also as he comes over the top, his arms are staying right here the whole time, and he's just going from forward to backwards. It looks really cool. It's hyper efficient. That's the type of thing that as I was watching his video, I'm like, yeah, that's something that I want to steal. I want to make my flip downs look like that. And so that, I think, is the biggest piece of advice from tonight. It's definitely the one thing I'm stealing from Mike, and I'm going to start telling everybody like it was my idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll come from somewhere.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think just in dissecting it piece by piece is super important. And sometimes like when you're progressing too, you get this like euphoria feeling, I feel like, where you're like, okay, oh my God, I actually like did that in the tunnel. And you did like in the tunnel, you didn't realize how it actually looked. And you watch the video and you're like, I kind of actually just flew that line. But you're right. When you dissect it a little bit and break it down, it definitely makes it easier.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. Well, guys, really appreciate you coming on tonight. For everybody watching, Collective Bodyflight Academy at gmail.com. We'd love for you to submit videos, give us some times that work for you to record, and get you on the channel to help share skills with everybody. Josh.
Free coaching.
Yes, free coaching. It's awesome.
Free coaching. Yeah.
I think there's actually one other thing that may actually be the most important thing that's said tonight, and that is never stop tearing the tunnel a new air hole.
Honestly, if you stop tearing the tunnel a new air hole, you're not really tunnel flying. Let's just put it that way. Yeah.
And here's
Speaking of
another thing.
which,
If you got belly flyers coming up behind you, use your air hole patch kits. You know they can't handle that bumpy air.
speaking of which, you two owe the Colorado community and myself. I will fly out for a Huck Jam whenever that is to happen. So you guys should get a day in the books ASAP.
I'd love that. We're gonna do
All right.
nationals this year, right?
We're doing nationals.
You guys are competing?
Yeah, you should come out.
Yeah, I'd love to. Is it at the Springs?
Yep. Get JB back on the horn.
Yeah, in November.
Yep.
All right, yeah. Whatever. I haven't even checked my calendar yet, but whatever.
Perfect.
We'll make it work.
All right, y'all. Have a good night, you guys.
See you guys.
Peace.